if thinking about it, what percentage of consumers would you think use Google to evaluate a local business? So yeah, again, feel free if you're paying attention and want to chime in, feel free to drop what you think in the chat. Got Katie 90 from Trisha 80 75. Cool. So the answer, at least from the study and the survey that I saw, the answer is 87%, and 95% of people aged 18 to 34. So us millennials who are addicted to our phones, we look at Google for the answers to everything. And my guess was 70, so it was a little higher than I thought. But yeah, 87 is pretty high. Next question, what percentage of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations? What would you think? So like as much trust in an online review as word of mouth recommendation. 45, 55, 50, 60. Yeah. So it's kind of what I thought as well. My guess was 77, but it's actually 88%, which I thought was crazy high. To trust a random stranger on Google as much as maybe like a family member, a friend, or trusted advisor. People, 88% of people trust their online reviews as much as word of mouth. So
Matt, can I jump in and do a shameless plug right now?
100, yeah, absolutely.
The BBB reviews are vetted, so you can trust the BBB reviews.
And we'll get to the BBB later on for sure.
Sorry, I just had to do it.
I love it. I love it. So how many reviews does an average consumer expect a business to have before trusting its star rating? So how many would you want to see a business have before trusting it? Yep, I see 20, 15. Yeah, I'd be interested to see like what in this study exactly specifically like what market they were looking at. But the study, at least I pulled this question and statistic from, said 40. My guess was 20. We'll look at like a graph later on of some like Google reviews in the New York City area. Like they're way inflated. So I don't know if this is people who are typically used to seeing more reviews on profiles or business profiles in their area. But I thought, it'd be about 20. The answer here was 40. So again, higher really than most people have put in the chat. So and then the last one here, how many reviews does Yelp receive every minute? What would you guess? And this one's kind of like ridiculous. And all right, so I'm seeing 100, 50. So I had said 800. The answer is actually 27,000. That was reported in 2020. So they have 220 million reviews by the end of 2020. I tried to do some math on this, but like it broke my calculator. If we did 27,000 reviews every minute from 2020 to today, I think we'd be like well into the like maybe into a billion. So I'm not quite sure how accurate that statistic is, but regardless, it's a lot. Like a lot of people are leaving reviews. Way more than we think, and we tend to trust them probably more than we would expect. So I thought that would be and that was really the reason I wanted to ask these questions. Did somebody have a question? No. Well, so the reason I wanted to ask these questions was sort of like pose the idea that there's a lot more reviews happening than we think, and they're a lot more impactful than we think, and so yeah, that I think shows that based on your all's responses. So very interesting. So the rest of the presentation, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more, and then we're going to go through like kind of the who, what, when, where, and why. We already know the what, which are reviews. We know the who, which are your customers, if you're a business owner, like your company's customers. But we're going to dive into, what you're going to take away from this presentation, We're going to dive into the psychology. So it's really like the why Google reviews or reviews, customer reviews in general, are so powerful. We'll look at a concept called social proof. We're going to talk about the platforms in which, we have limited energy in our day. And so with limited, amount of energy, if this is going to be a strict strategy that we adopt for our business in terms of marketing, where should we be spending that, in like that little energy that we have? And it's, spoiler alert, there's really one platform that just absolutely dominates it, except for one industry or one industry group where the BBB does really well. So shout out to the BBB. We're going to talk about like the SEO impact. So if you're collecting reviews in the right spot, it can have a serious impact on your organic search rankings, especially for local businesses, which I think most of us probably are here. Eden, what's going on? I see you joined. Thanks for joining, man. And then, then we're going to talk about some of the tactics. So like actual actionable steps you can take today, tomorrow, implementing this into your business or your company's business, and helping you, get inbound leads for your business. So a little bit more about me. I was first introduced to this concept actually in high school, and it would have been very Baltimorean of me to put in, in my high school logo there. But really the first time I ever was like keen to this topic through the digital marketing lens was when I was getting my master's at Elon. I got my master's in interactive media. That's when I took a theory class, and I read a very interesting book called Influence. And they talked about these weapons of influence and how they're used in our everyday life and the media and how people use them to profit. And I found it really, and it stuck with me. So when I started my business in 2016, this was just like a concept that was in the back of my head that I wanted to, I wouldn't say exploit, but I wanted to put energy towards it to help grow my business. And again, like I said in the beginning, I really attribute this and a couple other things to the success of how I was able to generate inbound leads to a very, very small company and compete with some of the larger marketing agencies in this area. And then, at Duckpin, we are a digital marketing and full service marketing agency. We work a lot on SEO campaigns, and this helps getting customer reviews is not just good to have testimonials on your website, but it really can impact your local search rankings and where you show up on Google Maps specifically. So the takeaways that you're going to have from this presentation and this session are, you should have a slightly better understanding of human buying behavior, human psychology, which is really at the root of all of this. And then you're going to be able to determine what platforms to focus energy on, as I mentioned before. Spoiler alert, there's just that one platform that I think you should really be focused on. And then those tactics, again, two of which I think are going to be like pretty obvious, but there's some nuances that I think are important. And then one concept or idea that and strategy that we've implemented with our clients that I think is pretty unique that not a lot of people are doing, and we've seen incredible results with. So we'll get into that as well. So let's talk about social proof and the psychology. I love psychology. Marketing really all comes down to psychology if you're doing it effectively. And as it pertains to this topic, it's really one concept, the concept of social proof. Anytime you see, a star rating next to something that's leveraging this concept. And this comes out of this book I read, like I mentioned, called Influence. And he talks about these 7 weapons of influence that are ingrained in our DNA. And they're shortcuts that we use to make decisions, usually good decisions. That's why they are still in our biology, right? They're ingrained in how we operate. And Cialdini, the author, he constantly reminds us that if people understand these concepts, it opens people up to profiteers, people who can like use these weapons of influence against us to get us to do things that we're not realizing. And a lot of the examples in his book, he constantly references people exploiting them, really to show us how powerful they are, because they happen to us without us even thinking about it. So what is social proof? Cialdini says we determine what is correct by finding out what other people think is correct. And then he expands on that to say we view a behavior as correct to the degree that we see others performing it. And since this is a BBB hosted event, this is everybody here should be potentially a business owner or works in a business. So to put this in like business terms, we can say that people will buy from us if we can show that other people have bought from us. And we could expand on that even further to say people will buy more from us if we can show that lots of people have bought from us, or influential people have bought from us. And those are things you've probably seen on people's websites, right? Like celebrity endorsements are social proof. The testimonials and customer reviews you have on Google, that's social proof. And Cialdini references some everyday sort of tactics that are used in other industries. So like bartenders putting a couple dollar bills at the beginning of the shift in the tip jar to try to condition their patrons to tip because other people have tipped, right? Or canned laughter on sitcoms, which I found out is actually not something that was implemented in modern day sitcoms. It was actually implemented back in the 1820s. There were businesses called clackers, which operas would hire these businesses, essentially hired paid actors and put them in the crowd, and they'd essentially choreograph the applause, the laughter, the crying, the emotions that they wanted to get from the audience. They would actually have people like initiate those in the crowd, and then people would follow suit. Like the standing ovation would come from essentially paid actors would start it. I found that incredibly interesting. And then a one that I really didn't realize was happening, but nightclub owners will purposely make the entrance to their bar or club really long before letting people in, so that the perception is that they're really, really busy inside, even though they haven't let anybody in yet. So this is a stat that sort of like shows this happening in businesses. That like a study found that people will spend over 30% more on a business with excellent reviews. So that statistic alone should make this kind of something that you should really focus on if you haven't, right? My one other quick story, my high school psychology teacher used to run this experiment in his class where he basically said to the whole class, he said, when I point to you, say Baltimore. And say, everybody understand? Okay, yep. He'd go out into the hall and he'd pull in just a random student walking past the classroom. And he'd pull them in and he'd ask the class, he'd have that person stand there in front of the class. And then he'd ask the class, what's the capital of Maryland? And he'd point to somebody, they'd say Baltimore. He'd point to another person, they'd say Baltimore. He'd point to a third person, they say Baltimore. He'd point to this random person he just brought in, and they would, every single time they'd say Baltimore. And if you ask that person that question, not in that scenario, they'd probably think about it and they'd say Annapolis. But because they don't want to stand out from what everybody else said, they'll just say the wrong answer. And the other time we see this happening to us, like if you think about it, like if we don't understand how to do something and we see other people's doing, we just assume that they know something that we don't, and we just fall in line. So like one of the times I can think of like where this happens is like leaving a baseball game or a football game, leaving a Ravens game. There's probably a very like a closest exit that'll get you to your car the fastest, but you just kind of like follow the crowd, because if other people are going in that direction, they must know the fastest way out, and I'll follow them, even though if you like really thought about it, you'd probably potentially go in a different direction. So just like a bunch of examples of how this is acting on us every day, and we're making decisions based on other people's actions, and how powerful its influence is. So when it comes, bringing it back to specifically to customer reviews, I wanted to talk about the platforms in which you can gather them, and this is the where part of this whole thing. And so, in full transparency, when I was thinking about putting this presentation together, I thought it would be a more even spread, especially for industry-based platforms, right? Like I thought Yelp would have a pretty good grip on maybe like food, and like you would see a more even playing field. And I thought I would have like 6 slides to go through. If you're a business in this industry, you should be going here. Or in this industry, you should be going here. But really, all the data that I found really pointed to Google being like far and away the leader when it comes to this. So when asked in a survey that was conducted by Bright Local, which apps you've used to evaluate local businesses in the last 12 months, almost 90% of people said they've used Google to evaluate businesses. And comparing that to the next closest competitor, you'd see Yelp, which is 48%. Facebook, I thought would be a lot higher. And also, like, just kind of looking at the last 3-year trends, you see like Google's continuing to take over, like as really like the behemoth in this space. The one caveat to that, and like where I got this sources, and big shout out to the BBB. When it comes to professional services, people trust the BBB. It's the closest competitor in any industry, and that was actually surprising to me. I wouldn't have guessed that or thought I respect the BBB. I just didn't realize how powerful it was. So that's pretty awesome, and that's probably why a lot of people are here. And I really like to pause here because, again, this was sort of in my mind the big discrepancy. So I really wanted to kind of pause at this step and say, and open it up to other people's opinions. Like, do other people agree with that? Have they experienced a lot of success on other platforms? Does anybody have any opinions on what? If not, that's totally fine. But I thought that, again, this shocked me. I thought there'd be some pushback. I can think of a couple other caveats that I wanted to bring up. Does anybody have any? No? Okay, all good. The couple caveats here being, like, in the financial industry, it's really, I think it's my dad's a financial planner. I don't think he's allowed to display testimonials. Like, it's like a compliance violation. Like, anything we do on his website has to go through compliance. And if they see anything that could be potentially considered a testimonial, you have to pull it off. So I didn't know if there was any like review gathering tools or survey tools that financial planners are allowed to use, maybe that where Google is just not a viable resource for them. I know in like the financial industry, sometimes there can be some other platforms you have to get like secure, or maybe in the medical industry or healthcare, HIPAA, you can't get certain testimonials. Just any thoughts here? Or
yeah, Matt, I work for an accounting firm, so also in financial services, and there definitely are some rules. And I think people just obviously prefer to keep it a little more private, what they're using this for. And so I'm not the expert at my company, but our marketing director, I do think she has a tool when we send out our customer satisfaction survey that somehow that rankings can go towards our SEO and different things. But like, we use the BBB. I know they've been a great help for us in getting some leads in. So I do think it can be a little more tricky, but I've heard it can be done in financial services. There's just a little bit more red tape.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the thing here is that I think it's a little bit nuanced for every specific industry. I'd still like go back and be like, if you just have never, if it's allowed, you should probably be getting some you should probably be leveraging Google to some to some extent. That's what I would think. But again, like your marketing director would probably know better than me. But that's a really good point. I appreciate you bringing it up. The other thing to this is if you're selling products online, so if you're doing e-commerce, like you want to gather your product reviews directly on the platform that you're selling your products on. So like if you're selling through Amazon, you want to make a concerted effort to get people who have bought those products from you. You want to, create some feedback loops to get people to leave reviews directly on your product, because that's how you're going to rank your products against other people selling the exact same things in those marketplaces. Or if you have your own e-commerce website, you're going to want to turn on those review features as well. So that's another kind of like difference. But if you're a brick and mortar selling products, Google is going to be where you're going to get is going to be where you're going to want to focus on. So I'd like to do a breakout session if everybody's okay with it. You know what? Actually, Susan, how are we feeling about a breakout session? Should we maybe use the chat? I'm interested. Basically, I wanted to find out who on the call works for the company or owns the company with the most Google reviews. That was kind of how and if we broke into smaller groups, we could find out. But maybe let's just use the chat, I'm thinking. People have introduced themselves in the chat. So if everybody could drop in how many they have. Duckpin owns a second agency. So I'm going to combine our two agencies' Google reviews. So we have 48 total. So I'm going to drop 48 in the chat. Susan, do you know if the BBB has a physical? So one of the things, 24 for Eden, good job. That's awesome. And if people don't know where to look, if you open up your Google Maps app and type 58, nice, awesome, Jesse. 21. The Joint Chiropractic has 319, 38, 97 from Amber, 12 Google, nice. Good. So people are definitely doing it. That's awesome. Can anybody beat 319? No. 305 or 5-star. Nice. No Google reviews. So interesting, Allegra. I'd like to, and I think to what I said sort of towards the end, like if that is your marketplace and people are buying from you on Fiverr, your audience is, purchasing directly from you on Fiverr, that makes total sense that's where you'd collect your reviews. If you're trying to do business though, in your local area or more business in your local area, getting Google reviews, dropping a pin, even if it's just, I got all my Google reviews from BBB of Greater Maryland, 97. Awesome. I got all my reviews from my apartment in downtown Baltimore when I was collecting my reviews. We had some commercial space in the first floor of our apartment, so I think a lot of people maybe thought that I had an office there, but really I just registered my business through Google with at my home address, and that was what I used. So you can use your home address if you wanted to. So Dawn, 319 is awesome. Do you know do you know how you got to such a high number? If you would be willing to come off mute and share, did it just happen organically? Do you know how you guys got that many? Or is there an actual strategy in place to get customers to leave reviews?
Yes, we do have a strategy in place. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do have a strategy in place. We've been open for 4 years. We're in the Foundry Row Shopping Center in Owens Mills.
Cool.
It's several different ways in which we get it. First and foremost, we do have a platform called Carbon, in which we can immediately send a patient a text or an email so that it takes them immediately to a link. So that's how we typically get it. But to be honest with you, old-fashioned asking. We are considered to be retail medical. So as soon as the patient signs up for a wellness plan, and they, walk out the door, we're asking them to please let others know about the wellness care, share it with them, and we're going to send you a Google review. If you won't mind doing that, that would be wonderful. Also, last thing, our doctor is instrumental as well. So a lot of people think highly of a physician, and the doctor will ask, and they will do it for the doctor. So that's kind of how we've gotten our reviews.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thank you for chiming in. I appreciate it. And the one thing I wanted to kind of like point out here, and we'll get to it later on, is that a lot of people, like, I think, see other businesses with lots of reviews and they immediately think, wow, they must have such an amazing business. People are leaving like so many reviews for them. And just what I wanted to kind of like drill down is that people don't just organically get to 319 reviews. Like, you have to ask for it. Like, there has to be a strategy. It has to be a concerted effort by the business. They have to be in the mindset of gathering them. It's not just going to happen. Like, people aren't going to just wake up and say, man, I had such an amazing time at Joint Chiropractic, or it's such a great business. I mean, it probably happens ever so often, but you have to trigger it. You have to ask for it. And that's the first, later on when I talk about tactics on getting them, asking it for it is the first tactic. Like, you have to ask for it. And there's ways to ask for it that I think are really good. And you kind of mentioned it, like, for your business, I'm sure in the ask, you can say, and I'll get to a little bit later on, but you can say, this is how this helps other patients with your pain or your problem find us. Would you be willing to leave us a review? And that alone can be very powerful, because people say, oh, I want to help other people. I want to help you find other people that you can help. Right. So if you're in the business, like a service business, or really any business where you're solving somebody's problem, that's how you can ask somebody for it. And people are very responsive to it. So
Man,
yeah.
And I have a question.
Can
Oh,
I
I'm
make
sorry,
one more
Todd, go
comment?
ahead.
I would like to make one more comment.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that it's important as to when you send that link, if you do send it out, because what I've noticed is Monday through Friday, they're not as apt to reply, because, I'm sure they're at work, they come home, they have, family responsibilities. But on weekends, I will send it, and they usually respond each and every time.
That's great. Yeah, timing is everything. Yeah, I was gonna. You beat me to it. Timing, like time of day, the time of the week, but also timing in the life cycle, essentially, of your business too. Like, you want to ask. Obviously, it might be common sense, but ask when somebody's most satisfied with your service. So it might be right after you meet with them. It might be right after you deliver the service. One of our clients, they do repairs. So we ask them, or an install. So right after they do the install, before something can go wrong, like, you have to ask. So these are like things that you just want to be aware of. And it starts with the mindset. Like, if you want to start gathering reviews for your business and you're in the right mindset of it, you'll start to think strategically about these things: when to ask, how you ask, what tools to use to ask. And we'll kind of get into some of that stuff towards the end. Susan,
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the people that replied in
Yeah.
the comments. I feel like places like Dawn's place, the Joint Chiropractic, where you're getting an immediate service, your people would be more inclined to review that than, say, somebody with Jennifer, who has the makers of Magic Firefly lights. It's not an immediate service. Is that true? And if so, how do you get people to?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. The other thing that I think about is, like, they're a B2C business. What we do is B2B. Like, we have way less clients, right? Like, so there's definitely businesses that are more advantaged, and I think it's just a matter of really analyzing your business and your service, and there's going to be some trial and error to it, but trying to figure out when is the best time to ask. How am I communicating with our clients? You can also, like, tee it up that, like, You can say, we're going to do we might find out that most of our clients are happiest after 3 months of servicing them. Like we do an ongoing service, right? We sign an annual contract. Our services, our clients are probably most happy. We know we start seeing a lot more results in an SEO campaign at 6 months. So we've teed it up where it's like, we let people know in the beginning that after 6 months, we're going to have a review process. We're hoping at that 6 months. And then that's when we're going to have essentially that's when we're going to be asking for it. And we know that so it's just, I think that to answer your question, it's like, if you have a longer term service, it's just really trying to understand when our clients can be happiest and how are we communicating with them. And that's where we need to be dropping the link in. That's when we need to be asking for it. So it's just being more cognizant and aware of when the best time to ask is going to be. But yeah, no doubt, if you have a brick and mortar location and you've got 30 people coming through and it's a very short interaction with the client, it's probably a lot easier to determine. It's easier to ask, and people are probably more receptive to it. So it's just getting creative, and we'll look at some other ways as well. But hopefully that answers your question a little bit. So this I think is really important, and particularly with what we do, the impact that getting a review on your Google profile can have on your SEO, which search engine optimization. It all comes down to, if you have a local service, it comes down to this Google's local 3-pack. So if you've never heard of the local 3-pack, it's if Google deems your search is you're looking for a local business, Google will present the Google map and 3 results next to it, above anything else. I think there might be a paid ad above that, but nobody clicks on paid ads anyway. So, but this is the first thing you'll see. So, and 44% of all clicks on local searches go to one of these three links, and Google determines which 3 businesses to rank here. I'm not going to get too in the weeds, because I'm pretty sure somebody in a couple of weeks is giving a presentation on this. So I don't want to kind of steal their thunder.
We actually just had it last week.
Oh, fantastic.
The
Then
SEO,
everybody here already knows exactly what I'm talking about. Awesome. And I don't even have to go into it. But the local 3-pack, the ranking factors are relevance, prominence, and proximity. Google likes to use these very fancy, vague terms and how they explain their algorithm. But 2 of which you have control over and 1 you don't. So proximity, you really can't control where somebody is searching from. But prominence and relevance, you can control essentially the keywords in your listing for relevance, right, to what somebody's searching for. You see hair salon, you're going to see it in a couple different spots in their listing. And then prominence really comes down to photos you have. If you're there's a feature to write posts, but really what it comes down to in all the studies that people have done, it comes down to reviews, and really not necessarily it's 2 things: the quality of your reviews and the quantity of your reviews is really what it comes down to. And so your goal, you don't necessarily have to have 100 reviews to get into this local 3-pack. Even with 5 reviews, after you get your review, Google, from my experience, and their reporting used to be a lot better. They changed it recently, but I used to see an uptick even when I had just 5 reviews. The 3 days after I got that review, I would be in the local 3-pack. And then after 3 days, I would drop out. So I would have to constantly get them until I reached sort of competitive levels of reviews to where I was constantly in this 3-pack. This is a graph that kind of shows you, based on average number of views, where you position in your rankings. Now, this is a New York City study, so these numbers are super inflated, but basically it still tells us that the leader of the company with the most reviews is going to be in the 1 position, and so on and so forth. but again, like you really only need to get in that 3-pack because the clicks amongst those 3 are relatively even. So it's not necessarily important about being 1, 2, or 3, but it is basically, this is the one position is security, right? If you're in the 3 spot, you're vulnerable of somebody else getting a more recent review than you and bumping you out. So you definitely want to shoot for the first one, but once you're in the 3-pack, you're going to get clicks. And so I just think that's just important to know, like the amount of reviews you have is important. Recency is important. And then if you're interacting with your local business profile, there's a whole bunch of different options. They totally changed this dashboard fairly recently. You used to have this awesome log, like it was more like Google Analytics where you'd log into it and you could see, it was a lot easier to use. Now they like jammed the whole dashboard onto the Google search results. So this is a client of ours. There's a button here that you click to ask. The next slide I'm going to show is this performance button. So you can see, you can get that feedback on how many people are interacting with your business. So you're going to get this nice graph of like over time, how many people have done something on your business profile. So they've either called, messaged, booked something, asked for direction, or got, clicked through to your website. So 519 on 140 reviews, 519 interactions over 3 months is pretty impactful. And the thing that I noticed was they were very qualified. They're very qualified interactions. So you're not getting, whereas like, or the organic search rankings, typical SEO, like creating content and building out the content to your website, you can get a lot of clicks that aren't really like qualified, or they're clicking through to your website, but they weren't really searching for your service. I found that the Google business profile interactions were way more qualified and targeted towards what I was doing. There's no like accidental clicks or bot traffic or anything like that. You were getting like really qualified phone calls, messages, and this was also, again, like how I competed. Like I was a 1 or 2 person small agency that had only been in business for 5 years. It was really hard for me to compete against larger agencies that had more resources, that were able to produce more content on their website on a more regular basis. Like I couldn't really play that game, even though I knew how to play it. They were just going to always outrank me for digital marketing in Baltimore. It was going to take me years to get onto the first page of Google. Whereas this, if I get a couple good Google reviews from a client, I suddenly jumped everybody in those organic rankings. So in terms of like effectiveness of your time, asking a client for a Google review and getting these types of results, I thought was just like was great bang for your buck, because I was getting awesome calls off of it for relatively low effort. So we've talked about it already. Dawn brought up some great things, and thank you for giving the answer you did, because I feel like it's going to validate this a lot. The first tactic is just to ask for it. Timing is everything. We talked about in that ask, like letting know that this will help other people like you find me. I always found that phrase to be like extremely powerful. One thing to mention here for sure is you cannot bribe or incentivize anybody, like giving them a discount if they leave you a review. That is totally breaking Google's guidelines. I don't know how they'd find out. Maybe they're listening through our phones. I don't know. But I never recommend anybody do anything that would break Google's guidelines, because you could be blackballed, you could be pulled off of Google, you could lose all your rankings, and it'd be a huge pain in the butt to try to regain any ground that you got. And then the second piece of this is definitely leverage email for your asks. Like it's great to ask in person, but are you really going to stand there in front of them when they for them to leave you a review? And the best chance of getting the review is when they're actually on a device that will allow them to leave the review. So if they're on their desktop, you give them a link, it takes you right to their profile. See, okay, we'll get to that question for sure. But asking via email, via text message, Dawn said they use a tool. I've never specifically used any of the tools, so I'm not going to, but I didn't put any in my slides. I know there's Bird Eye. There's probably a lot of tools built into CRMs that have this feature turned on. Just try to look for like industry specific tools too, that might integrate with some of the other technology that you're using. I think that'd be something, a good thing to try. Anything that's going to automate the email so that you don't have to remember to type the email out to ask for it. And again, if you can identify like where in the process is the best time to ask, you can then build in automation into your communication with your clients to make sure you're asking for it at the right time. And then this last one I thought was the most unique, and I've got a quick case study to show. But creating gamification around collecting your reviews. So competition amongst your employees for gathering them can be really, really powerful. We're running short on time, and I want to make sure that we get time for some questions. So this is where you're going to find that link so that you can copy and paste it into your emails or to your text messaging systems. It's going to look like this. You just click this button, you'll be able to copy and paste it. This slide just shows like where people are more likely to leave you an online review. So where you're asking for it is definitely important. Really, any of these I think are fair game. Again, like if you're just asking over the phone, they're like, oh yeah, I'll do it, and then they don't do it. Chat, you want it to be authentic too, so don't really use chat bots. This is a client of ours. We also recommend like passively making it easy for people to get to, so that if you've asked them and they haven't acted upon it yet, if they're interacting with your newsletter, they see your newsletter, oh, I remember when Matt asked me to leave him a review and I never got around to it. While I'm here reading his newsletter, I can just click this button and easily leave it. Putting it on your website. If you're proud of the service that you provide clients, you shouldn't be afraid to publicly display the button. I mean, somebody who's had a very negative experience who wants to trash you on Google, they're going to be able to get to it. So putting it on your website is not going to increase the odds of you getting negative reviews. I get that a lot from clients of like, oh, I don't want to allow people to leave me a bunch of negative reviews, so I don't want to display that. And then to just get to that last tactic. What's up, Eden? Thanks for popping on camera. Good to see you, man. This last is a case study we did with a client. So they're a little bit larger organization. So I'm not sure how this could be potentially implemented, but maybe for Dawn, if you have multiple doctors, you could kind of create something similar to this, or you could just have a friendly bet amongst coworkers on who can gather the most reviews. But basically, this was a leaderboard that we developed for a client, where all their technicians had unique codes to be able to give to their clients to gather reviews, and then it tracked their technicians on who could get the most reviews. And at the end of the month, the leader, so not only did it incentivize somebody to win a gift card, it also incentivized their employees to not look like a slacker amongst all their other coworkers. And this we found incredibly effective. Overhead door, some of their locations have over 600 reviews. So just like a small interactive element, publicly displaying it amongst coworkers was just really powerful to create this competition and gamification around this strategy of getting reviews. And it's been extremely impactful for their business. That really brings me to the end. So I definitely left 10 minutes for some questions. I see some things. Missy dropped in a question. how can we make it the easiest for customers to leave reviews? Yeah, so I mean, that's the last part of this was really like getting it in front of them. Like you have to get it in front of them. Including it in your communication, asking for it. I think those are all ways that you can make it easier. Kim asked, how can you find if you're in the Google 3-pack? That's a great question. Basically hitting that performance button, you'll be able to see whether or not people are interacting with your business. If you're getting big upswings and interactions, that's going to clue you in. There's also a bunch of good SEO tracking tools that will help you with this. Some you have to pay for them. Eden might be able to chime in. Eden, do you know if there are any free tools that will show you if you're in the local?
No.
Yeah, so
Unfortunately,
you kind of have to so this tool SEMrush is a great one that we use here at Duckpin, that allows you to track keywords that are directly tied to your website and your organic search listings, and they'll put like a little icon next to specific search terms. So like if you're a hair salon in Parkville, you'd be able to see that keyword in your list of keywords and know whether or not you're showing up in the local 3-pack. The other way is to just sort of anecdotally test it out, like do some searches on your own. Sometimes though, Google will sort of know, if you're searching inside of your business location, Google's probably gonna show you here. So that's not a great way to do it. I'd probably test it going to the restaurant down the street, or asking somebody who's never been to your location to look at it. You really just kind of have to do some trialing, or at least that's how I did it.